Do we have video and everything?
We have video, but you got 2 minutes. So,
Oh, okay.
so somebody can hum the Jeopardy theme song that will work.
So your pause with the split till 5, is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, I can pause it.
That would be good.
Hold on. All right. We're good.
So we have video, we have everything.
We have video, we have everything.
There's no, like,
If you unplug the USB device and plug it back in.
Because I moon the public.
oh, there we go. Almost there.
Electric is also in this process.
Okay, we're good?
We should be good.
I make a motion to call the meeting to order. Is there a second?
Second,
We have
Justin can have
Dolby. Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Marshall?
Aye.
Trustee Lickett?
Aye.
Trustee Mayor Plummer?
Aye.
Motion passes. Way too short.
Can you let Scott know we're back? Oh, thanks so much. Okay, appreciate that. Is there any board member who has any conflict of interest or anything to disclose relative to the items before us this evening?
I do not. I do not.
I do not. Dorothea, with that being said, can you give the Cliff's Notes for?
Cliff notes, if anybody has any comments, please raise your hand if you're in chat, or put your question in Q&A and I'll be happy to ask the question. I would just say everybody be nice to each other and let's go team and have a good meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for the delay for anybody who's online and also to any participants in the room. We had some technical difficulties that have since been resolved. So we move forward. First up, we have public comment. Is there anyone wishing?
We need to open the public hearing. Oh, the public
comment?
Never.
It's at the top of the
Yeah, I
agenda.
know. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm not playing with the folder.
Anybody online?
We have one person.
Any, to comment? I mean, is there anybody?
No
Okay,
comments.
okay, thank you. Moving along, I make a motion to open the public hearing for the special permit application for 14 South Main Street.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Marshall?
Aye.
Trustee Lickett?
Aye.
Mayor Plummer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. Come on up, grab a chair, whatever you need.
My name is Andre Pedroso. The address 31 Glen Hollow, Rochester, New York. And I'm here representing the special permit for 14 South Main Street.
We heard from you on several occasions,
Oh yes,
right?
it's a sweet bakery with coffee and gelato. So we had our business in Florida and trying to bring it here now. So
Okay.
hopefully this gets through.
Okay. Steve, did you have any comments, just in terms of the site plan and anything?
No, the site plan has been filed there. They said I contacted Charlie on a few small maintenance
Mhm.
issues for their benefit, I went over the seating plan and they have 50 seats, which is way less than the available parking by code. So they have more than enough parking spaces based on the seating chart that has been provided.
Okay.
We did discuss, as in our previous approvals, is having an entry, one way in, one way out, only right turn onto the street.
Steve, to clarify, that's part of the site plan, existing site plan?
That was a requirement in the previous approval for
Okay.
a restaurant on the location.
Okay, so everything is in compliance already with the
Correct.
pre-existing plan that had been approved prior? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that,
Yes, yes. But
Okay.
that special permit is gone. I mean,
yeah, but nothing's changed in terms of those requirements. Okay, we have a public hearing that's open. Is there anybody wishing to speak or comment from the public?
I have nobody.
Okay, Seems a little quiet out there. Any thoughts from either trustee, or?
You want to close the public hearing?
Yeah, we should close it first. And so if no one's commenting, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Lightgev.
Aye.
Trustee Marshall.
Aye.
Mayor Plummer.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, comments from the board?
Sure. So the idea sounds great, and thank you for bringing this application to us and for coming in again. I did just want to make sure that we discussed the findings sufficiently, and our attorney had sent some possible findings for us to consider. Jeff, could you just clarify, do we need to read through those, or can they be entered into the record afterwards?
Yeah, well, I
Okay.
mean, we could adopt them, put them in the record.
Okay. Just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. I guess the one thing that has changed from the previous board special permit is that there is a residential use that's closer to the restaurant now than previously. And it looks like it's it's under 200 feet to the residential structure. And previously that was not a residential use.
Across the street, I mean.
Yeah.
Across the street, across Church Street, right?
The old Masonic Lodge.
Yeah, correct. And I think that we've taken that into consideration with some of these findings that were suggested by our attorney. I did just want to clarify, though, as regards the dumpster, there is an enclosure for the dumpster, is there?
It is on the back, right at the end of the parking lot, there is a reserved area for the dumpsters.
Okay, and so that's, let's see here. Oops, okay.
I did check and the dumpster enclosure is viable.
Good, okay.
Yeah,
And
you had
that's-
mentioned that in the last meeting, that you had done an inspection of that site.
Gotcha, so that's in the back corner of the
Yeah.
parking lot there, right? Okay. And as far as usage of the dumpster, and especially putting bottles into the dumpster and that kind of thing, and the noise, is there a plan for when the dumpster would be utilized to avoid or to mitigate some of the noise that neighbors might be able
Yeah, we
to?
can easily figure something out. I mean, we don't want to bother anyone, but
Mhm.
I mean, we all use disposable, so it's not bottles, glass bottles, so it won't make
Okay.
any noise. It's just really, we can avoid night hours or whatever you.
I think the reason why the question is being asked is there's other parts in the village where there's commercial operations that are somewhat close to residences, and sometimes they have bottles, and so
Yeah.
they're taking them out at night, and, they're throwing them in the dumpster, and, it's,
Or it's paper, or it's
paper's
disposable.
quiet.
Yeah.
Steve, do you have any suggestions by any chance for wording that might help us to ensure that usage of the dumpster, any kinds of conditions would?
No usage after 11 p.m. That's the quiet
Yeah.
hours in the village. They
It's in our code.
close at 8 o'clock. You can't see anybody being there past, even cleanup and closing past 10, you know what I mean? So I would just say no dumpster usage after 11 p.m. because that's the quiet hours in the village.
Yeah, that's enough for me.
Okay, all right. And prior to, I imagine, what time do they go until generally, the quiet hours?
7 a.m. so
Thank you.
morning time. So 7 to 11 for dumpster usage.
Okay, great. And that's okay with you as far as all right, I'm okay with that too. Any other concerns from
Okay,
the
yeah.
board?
Okay.
As a condition. So I don't, Steve, did you say there are 28 parking spaces?
24.
24, okay. So we would just want to modify that from the, Jeff, I think you had mentioned 28. so-
Right, I don't know where I got that. I thought it was
That's fine.
10.
Okay, yeah, we talked about other, Jeff, you had very helpfully mentioned other issues, including that it's conforming to the zoning, and that there's a restaurant in this location before. Any complaints about the previous restaurant that we have on file?
None that I have on record.
Okay, all right, great.
Yeah, and I think you had brought that up as well in the previous meetings, so you're confirming that again. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else then, as long as we can
I think
adopt.
your motion could actually adopt my proposed findings. If you
Yep.
wanted to,
Okay,
along with the quiet hours
okay.
and operating as the previous special permit was required to operate.
Okay. Then I will make the motion that we approve the special permit with the conditions associated with the prior special permit, and the condition of not using the dumpster during the quiet hours for the village, which were specified as between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., as well as our attorneys suggested findings of fact, amending the amount of parking spaces from 28 to 24 as is represented on the site.
I think you covered it.
I also.
That was a good one. Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second, please?
No second.
Okay, that's a good idea that you did. Very good.
Roll call. Trustee Lickett.
Aye.
Trustee Marshall.
Aye.
Mayor Plummer.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
We're really happy you're coming into the village. Thanks so much.
Thank you. You don't need to check more.
That's great, thank you. Looking forward to stopping.
Great rest of your day.
Thanks again. Okay, next up, the review of the GPI contract. Is Scott Harder on the line?
He is. He was here long before us.
I know. Very patient, that Scott.
Can
Scott?
you hear me okay?
Yeah, there you are. Hi, Scott. Thanks for your forbearance. We had some technical difficulties.
Yeah, I could see you, but you couldn't hear me.
That's kind of what happened, but now we can hear you beautifully. Okay, so we have the, again, the GPI contract before us. And I know, I'm sure you guys have some questions or some thoughts on this, so if we could hear from the board.
Sorry, just flipping my page.
Okay,
So Scott, my biggest question just has to do with the cost differences from the original project and scopes that was contained in, let me just find the date, the response from GPI looks to be May 10th, when at the time they presented, well, there's a few things. You had the original contract, which was $93,000, that was specific to, I think, just South and Wood. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, let me just finish my thought. And then on May 10th, in the agenda, they showed the differences between the South and Wood Street costs as well as the Sutherland costs. And then here we have the response that's specific to just South and Wood, plus some work on Sutherland. And as I'm looking at it, for example, and again, this is what I was looking for clarity on, for example, the preliminary and final design bid award for South and Wood originally came in, it looks at 59,000, and then, but that was prior to the work including Sutherland, where it was 92,000 for the preliminary design, but that included Sutherland. They had allocated 45,000 of that to South and Wood, and now we're looking at, say, 53,000. So am I right that the costs are lower than they were on the standalone bid, but higher than they were on the aggregate bid?
I think they can answer that question better than I can. I'm aware of the fact that we had originally proposed Sutherland and Wood Street, and that the number came in at 93 for that. And then I'm aware that we removed Sutherland Street, which had caused the number to go up over 100. What was it, like somewhere around 150, I think. As to how they manage their numbers, I don't have a specific answer for you. I could go back and talk to them, or maybe have them attend another meeting if you'd like. They know the source of their numbers better than I do. I know it more from an overall perspective, not from shall I say, a micro perspective.
Because what you're saying is that you're looking at the increase now between South and Wood is different from what it was before. Am I correct? I just want to understand it,
Yeah,
just so
so
everybody else can understand
I-
it. Listen.
Right, I'm looking
Yeah.
at an original, the
Yeah.
first $93,000 bid that came back had survey and mapping, preliminary and final design, construction inspection, some reimbursable expenses, direct costs, but it came to 93,000. Zach, am I right that that's just for South and Wood?
That's the May 11th.
This is,
This is a bid.
this is going back to what Zach just made a
This
copy of.
is South Street, Wood Street, and Sutherland Street improvements.
That's the original bid.
So the original bid goes back, that 93,000 that you just provided, was that doing survey and mapping and preliminary design of Southwood and Sutherland?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, because when I
Just
look
looking
at,
at the cover
Yeah.
sheet here.
I'm looking at it at the bottom of the page. Southwood and Sutherland.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
right, so, okay,
Yeah, I mean, it's there on the page.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all literally. on the
We
same
talked
page.
about it too, is
Yeah.
the streets, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. So then we went back and asked for, so then what happened is they came back and the contract was 181.
Mhm.
And we said, wait, why is it so much higher than the original 93? And they said, well, a bunch of stuff wasn't included. And I don't know, my challenge is I'm trying to figure out how we went from 93 to 181 back to 93.
We went from 93 to 181 because we had a meeting with them after the first quote came in, and we added items to it that included Sutherland, whereas that wasn't the case originally. We had a meeting with them to discuss those additions.
Sutherland was the case in
Sutherland
the
wasn't
original
it?
quote.
Yeah.
yeah. We need to sort this. I see where you, are we missing something here?
What was it?
Yeah.
What was it that wasn't included in, so Zach, you have the full copy of that first response at 93,000. All of that work, did that not include, like what part of the Sutherland work did that include? Because as I'm looking here at the May 10th response, if here they very easily split out South and Wood and Sutherland, and South and Wood
Yeah.
comes to 120.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I've got that.
Sutherland comes to 61, and there's the 181. So as I'm looking here, it looks to me like this new response is a play upon the first response, which wasn't including the survey and mapping and preliminary and final design of Sutherland. And it was really just specific to South and Wood, but it's coming in a little bit less. It's coming in, $2,500 less on the survey and mapping. It's coming in $6,000 less on the preliminary and final design. And then the construction inspection's the same. So again, this makes me think that this first response to the bid that we first received at 93,000 didn't include the Sutherland work. And then when we had that second meeting, they went back and gave us, the fuller quote. And then for this 93,000 now, it looks like what they've done is added some observation and geotechnical work and kind of dropped back some of the expenses on the survey and preliminary and design.
So if I'm understanding where we're going with this, is that we have sort of 3 different price charts for different bids, and they don't match up. And what I think that I'm hearing is that, can we match it up so we see what was left out, what was added back in? I think, is that what my takeaway is from this?
So I understand Dave's concern, and certainly it seems like some things don't quite match up. Other things do match up better than I would expect. For example, going from 93,000 to 181,000 with a different scope, and then back exactly to 93,000 with a different set of things that we're asking for.
I think what they did when they went back to the 93, they said, this is in my mind, that the first bid response was probably more specific to South and Wood than we thought. So then when we approved it, thinking it included Sutherland, and it came back at 181, it didn't include a lot of that stuff. but maybe I'm wrong.
The first bid definitely included
It
Sutherland.
did,
Okay,
And so that's why I'm concerned that it matches
because we didn't get
two.
any responses.
I guess, let me see if
Yeah.
my interpretation,
yeah,
okay?
Sure.
It's just the clerks. My guess is the first bid went out, they came, they met with us, they found there was other things that needed to be done with the project. So the second quote came in at the 180, 190. Then when they met with us, they went, okay, 120 of that was for Southland Wood. Let's see if we can trim that cost and bring it back to the 93 to make this palatable for the board.
Because they knew that's what we had approved. and they
Right,
were
so I
trying
think
to
they're
give us
trying to
best efforts in
make
responding.
it so we can move forward, is the way I'm taking it. I could be dead wrong, but that's what's telling me, because they were estimating that single straight could be 120. They're trying to work with us, knowing that we're trying to pinch pennies for the project.
so do you see then, as you think about the survey and mapping, in this case it says survey and mapping on Southland Wood, they're showing 16,500 on this last response. When I look at the joint bid project, the survey and mapping for Southland Wood was 12,000. So by excluding Sutherland, they're saying that that cost is higher by 30+%.
And actually, almost that makes sense. Why? Because they're doing more, it takes less. When you're doing it, you're out there surveying, it's easier to do more than less, is what I've been told. I don't know. It should be relative. Now they got, I'm guessing.
Scott?
Well, I think when you're surveying and you're already mobilized and you already have your equipment going, you have a momentum, if you will, with what you're doing, to the extent that you can do additional areas that under that situation. But it sounds to me like we should have them return and go through a detailed explanation to answer all the questions. I don't know the particulars of how they put all their numbers together. Only they really do.
Okay, that's helpful.
Mayor, do you see it the same way I do? Do you think?
No, I mean, I think you're raising some important points, but I'm listening, because we had these meetings, and I'm listening to also what you said, and you're right. I think they recognized that the parameters that we had set financially was a $93,000 approval.
Right.
And so I think that they circled back to that and put in what they thought they could do and what we needed within that parameter in their final response to us.
Okay.
So I think you really raised a good point, that they clearly recognized the financial concerns that were raised by this board.
Right, and I think when they did the deeper scope, when they met with Scott, Zach, and myself, we just started sitting there. I think they realized the project was really in depth, and I think Sutherland affected it quite hard.
Yeah.
And then when they came back to us and we were like, whoa, I think they went, you know what, let's try to sell it to them, make it palatable, make it within the scope. So if they came to us with 120, you'd probably be like, okay, that matched that. But I think they actually dropped it.
And I just might add, I'm looking at this one that's broken out, and I'm noticing that the preliminary design followed by the final design is actually 45,000, then 35,000. So if you add those together, you're at 80,000. And under the preliminary and final design specific to Southland Wood, they're showing it at 53,000 on this most recent response, which is in fact $27,000 less.
That's why when I go back and look at it, that's what I'm saying. I think they're really trying to work within the financial parameters that we set forth, because they understood our concerns.
And the construction,
they're trying to be responsive.
Sorry to interrupt. The construction inspection specific to Southland Wood is 25,000, and in this bid response, it is 16,000. So again, if they're looking at how do we arrive at the 93,000 they previously approved under contract, can we do that work for that cost? It seems like they're coming in.
They're trying to do it.
It actually looks like then, based on what I'm seeing for this breakout, at 120 versus 93, it might actually be quite a bit less. The difference being under the original 93, it might have included some of Sutherland, but I still don't think that that's the case. I think that's probably why they went to the second step.
Yeah, I think Sutherland, when we had the conversation with them, really went, wow, we need do a lot more with Sutherland. I think Sutherland was.
Sutherland was bigger than we all
Yeah.
realized, I think, when we really got into it, because it really hasn't been touched in a long time.
Right.
Yeah, I think this all falls under the scope of the project, just kept changing.
Mhm.
So that's why different numbers have been proposed.
Scott and Zach both open question. Could you share with me, in doing this work, what is the shelf life of this work?
The final product of the road surface?
No,
The longevity of the improvements?
the longevity of the engineering work that we're getting done, the survey and mapping, the preliminary design, the final design. Obviously, the construction inspection assumes construction,
Right.
but how about the first three?
So in other words, doing the surveying, the engineering, the design and the approvals, how long is that? How long can you hold on to that and have it still be fresh? Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
And I think that's a function of what happens in time. If you're in a dynamically changing environment, you may not have a lot of time to work with. In Pittsford, we don't have a lot of change because we're pretty much fully urbanized, unless some utilities come through there. So I think you do have a good shelf life on that. With respect to Wood and with respect to South Street, I think if you were to, for example, hold on the engineering, hold on the construction and just kind of park the engineering, you still have, periodic maintenance that may be done. I think, as we discussed last time, that may not be a good use of funds, in that those funds for periodic repairs could be put towards the construction costs that we're talking about.
And then wouldn't that also affect, you're also up against further degradation of the road?
Yeah.
Am I correct? And then if the maintenance that you're doing potentially can affect what was originally engineered?
Not necessarily affected, but it's throwing money away, more or less.
Yeah, okay, that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, you're not going to get it back, because whatever we're doing to maintain the existing road is going to be removed and replaced. So it's just, a waste of time and money.
Okay, so then the other piece of longevity, so you're talking about sort of the front end stuff being done. So then once, say this is all is done and the work is brought up to where it should be, the road is brought up to where it should be, what would the longevity then be in this instance of South and Wood going forward? Like just for the road, the lifespan?
The road surface itself,
Like when would it need another major?
every 6 to 8 years to do a surface treatment to the road.
Just surface.
And then after 30 years, doing another mill and pave to.
Okay, so we're looking at a 30-year window with routine sort of maintenance
Correct.
in between.
And
that would
those
happen.
years might change depending on, a lot of factors, but, it's the general idea of
Roughly.
how it works, yeah.
Does that make sense, Scott, that roughly, you have your routine maintenance, but once we go in and if we do the project, we have 93,000 approved, we have a 30-year window, essentially, before we would have to come back and revisit this, roughly? Is that where we're going with this?
Well, I think you might even get more than that if doing these streets now predisposes the village into the milling aspect of things, as opposed to the continuous surface overlays that we've been doing, which cause the drainage improvements on Wood Street. If we go back to where we need to be and progressively mill, then I think you've got much greater longevity. I would ask Zach what he thinks about that. South Street, I think, has been milled and paved. I don't know how many overlays that's gotten. Zach, can you tell?
So, yeah, I've been there for 11 years and I have not done one surface treatment to South Street. So it's due. I don't know when the last one was. My records, I don't think reflect that. And that's really all I've got on that, honestly. I don't know. It's a rock
Okay, yeah.
honestly.
So let me ask this question. So the surface work that you just expressed that you haven't done in 11 years, when you look at the road now, it needs it.
Well, it needs not just surface work.
That's the whole point. If we keep doing surface work, all we're doing is essentially what I remember Scott Harder saying, we're creating the asphalt sandwich. We're not actually doing
Yeah,
a proper.
We're to the point where the road is, the lifespan of the road is almost.
And so this, you know, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just asking a question to follow through in a train of thought. So right now, if you were to do work on the road, you really can't do additional surface work on South. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, but again, that's just throwing money away because you're not really, it's putting a Band-Aid on a cancerous sore.
We're not solving it.
Though the last surface work hasn't been done for 11 years. So the quick question on surface work is how long does that last?
Every 6 to 8 years or so, you're supposed to, the idea is to maintain the surface as best possible before it hits a certain degradation point, and at that point, once it really starts to degrade, then the degradation happens that much faster. So,
Are we at that point with South is the question. So at this point, we can't do a surface work.
it would not make sense to do.
Which is actually why we're looking at South and Wood, because this was identified how many years ago?
First brought this to the table in 2017.
Sure, and the oddity about politics is we all roll over a lot, so these questions are for me to catch up.
Yep.
No, I understand, but I'm just trying to give the context of it, that it's been identified. I mean, it's not a newly identified
And
problem.
because of the size of the road is what's taken us out of being able to do the road ourselves. And plus, the curb ramps also being brought up to an ADA compliance, which again removes us from being able to do that project, or else it would take us 3 years to do the project.
Okay, so let's take the next step, and again, this is why I asked the question on the shelf life of engineering work. So what I don't like is putting something out to bid, and then having somebody work with us like GPI, and then essentially walking away. It feels wrong to me, and we have a hard enough time getting bid responses, right? That's discouraging, right? So we've identified this, we want to move forward on it. So now the question is okay, we got the engineering work done. How long does the road have until we have to redo it? Meaning if we were to wait 6 months, next year, does it have to be this year? What challenges does South specifically present? I know Wood has the drainage, but how about South? What specific current challenges on South exist that require us to do it today?
One complaint that I've been getting for the last 2 weeks is a noisy manhole out in front of 26 South Street. And every time a car drives over it, it moves and it creates noise. So upon first inspection, we went out there, we thought it was the lid that was loose because the frame was kind of broken. And we put a shim, this padding, this bitumen padding that goes around the lid to try to tighten it up, and it didn't solve it. There's a patch that's cut, it's about 5 foot by 5 foot around the manhole, and it's starting to crack, and the asphalt is degraded to the point where that patch is going to have to be tore out and replaced. And what's happening is the frame of that manhole is moving on top of the brick barrel that creates the access to the actual sanitary sewer that is, 10 feet great. That bell housing, that frame is going to have to be removed and reset. Now, that's just one of them because of the road degradation. And out of 11 or 12, I think, on that road, that we're going to end up having to do the same thing to because of, the water that gets in there, the freeze-thaw cycle, and loosens everything up. It becomes more of a maintenance chore than anything. And we spend more of our time addressing those problems rather than actually doing something proactive.
So share with me other things like that. So that's really good to know.
Potholes, obviously, cracks form in the road. Plows hit them as the road starts to move up and down from freeze-thaw cycles.
Are they there now, or are you starting?
Yeah, I mean, we spend, every year we go through and probably put about 4 or 5 tons of asphalt on that road to patch it. So we'll
per year,
borrow a machine, mill out sections of that asphalt, and then replace it with high asphalt.
Right.
And again,
so that's the cost of time plus the labor plus the materials, right? all these things.
And again, you mentioned it's sort of the Band-Aid, it's not actually fixing.
Yeah.
There's an underlying,
chasing our tail with it. So, more penetrations that you would have in the surface of the road. And, as like the water authority comes through and digs up the road to replace a water service, or a gas valve in the middle of the road that needs to be cut out and replaced, that causes, another opening in the road at some point. And all those openings create infiltration and allows for the road to heave and create puddles.
What's the season that roads get done? All seasons, not winter?
Yeah, I would say, from the break of spring through, just before the freeze.
We're talking November, or does it have to be before?
well, the asphalt plants.
Typically, we're stuck, we're bound to whenever the asphalt plants are operating, and they usually don't operate in freezing conditions.
Okay. Will this road make it through a winter?
I think it's going to have to, if I remember
Yeah, we
correctly.
have no choice.
It was going to go out to bid in the spring, so this would be a next year project. We
Yeah.
don't want it, because of the type of project it is, it would become, it wouldn't be in our regular budget. It's going to have its own separate budget. It wouldn't, we had set it up as a special budget, so it would have its own budget. So we'd start it, like, if we go through with the engineering, I would create that budget now, and it would go until the project is completed.
And what do you mean by is it gonna make it through the winter?
No, I was just asking the question. I didn't remember if we were planning to do it this year or next year, and so based on some of the things going on in the
I think
village,
it,
I was thinking
We
it might
always
get pushed
thought it
out.
was gonna happen next spring.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
at this point,
yeah.
we're so far into the season,
Yeah.
by the time it went out,
It'll be done.
we got a contractor in, most likely the season will be over.
Mhm.
Besides, all the concrete work would have to get done first, which means by the time we get the asphalt, who knows what that's gonna be.
And this, talking about the shelf life of the engineering work, you get it done now, it easily can make it to next year.
Yeah, I think that was the idea, is to start the process of getting everything down on paper. So come the break of the weather next year, in 2024, we would have a plan to be able to put out the bid and keep things rolling, hopefully at that break.
Do you have an estimate on the cost of yearly maintenance for that road this year and next year? Like if next year is the same as this year, assuming it, let's assume, again, this is just a line of questioning for me to gain information, not an opinion. But if next year, the cost of maintenance is the same as the cost of maintenance this year, what does that cost us per year?
I've never, been able to sit down and do it all at once, because it's not just that road that gets all of our
Right.
attention. It's part of an overall project. We'll hit, the whole east side of the village at once, so it might be 2 weeks worth of work.
Do you think this is a $25,000 cost per year in maintenance, 50,000?
No, and honestly, this year is going to be cheaper because our asphalt prices are about half of what they were 2 years ago. So,
And what's the total cost of the road again? The road, if we move forward on South and Wood, that was
we're
another
looking around 350, 300, and it might come down at asphalt.
350,000?
We won't know until, well, that was including, I believe, Scott, correct me.
no, I think the projected construction costs are going to be about $700,000.
For just,
South of Wood.
That's what I recall, something high.
We're looking at
maybe
the
I'm
million.
going
You're
with,
looking at the original-
I'm taking the original thoughts.
Thinking of the
I'm sorry.
original
Yeah,
cost.
Yeah.
when we were looking at
Wow.
having this done,
Sure.
it was the engineering itself was about $25,000.
Okay, so
And
let's,
the road construction was about,
350.
maybe about 300.
doesn't help us with today, so let's look
No,
at today. So let's say 700, we got $100,000 of engineering work, so let's put it at 800,000. Do we have some sort of amount that the state's chipping in, or what was that?
Yes, we have a grant for $100,000 that we were able to get 2 years ago
Right, for the sidewalk
for
portion.
the sidewalk, to bring all the sidewalks on South and Wood up to compliance.
Okay, we can apply it to all this work that we're doing. Okay, so that's 700,000. Let's say it takes us, just simple numbers, $35,000 a year in maintenance, right? That's 20 years of maintenance. So by having it last 30 years, right, 700,000, if that road's going to last us 30 years with relatively small amounts of maintenance per year, right, much lower than, right, then what I'm trying to do is say, is the cost of maintenance more than the cost of getting it done?
Well,
And it
so,
seems like we're probably close to that, if not
not
near.
necessarily, once the base starts to go,
Yep.
if the base of the road
It's gonna
itself goes, like, not just the surface that
Yep.
you're looking at, but the actual, the soil and the binding asphalt that would be underneath that surface.
Yep.
If that starts to go, then you're looking at, I mean, you may as well double the cost of the project.
Yeah, so I guess in my mind, I think, okay, $700,000 net roughly, if that's the total cost of this thing. And we've got 30-year shelf life with some work along the way, but let's just say it's 30 years. Then you're looking at about, what, $23,000 a year, not inflation adjusted, but, getting it done now is about $23,000 a year for a brand new road for the next 30 years. And if it's costing us more than $23,000, where the risk is that if we don't get it done next year, that accelerates greatly as we go into 24, what we're advocating, I think, generally speaking, the majority of us here, right, is get it done sooner rather than later, because if you have a cost year where it's like 35 or 40 grand because you waited too long, all of a sudden that's well more than the cost of putting it in a new one. It's the same issue you have with cars, right? As your car starts to decline and maintenance starts to go up, it's cheaper to just buy a new car, right? And if we can't do the work ourselves because we're not equipped to do this significant of work, then at some point you have to make the decision to go get the new car or the new truck. And these are all those sort of fine line discussions. And so I think just based on this whole conversation and looking again at that information that came back to me from that May meeting, I don't think I need to talk with GPI again, because, well, let me ask maybe the other board members, do we feel confident as to what was included in the first and what was included in the last $93,000 and $93,000 bid response?
I do, to the extent that, I mean, we had extensive meetings with GPI, and I think they really understood what our parameters were, and I don't think they would have responded to a proposal that they felt wouldn't give us a complete project. I mean, that's the business that they're in. I mean, Zach, if you want to add something, and Scott after Zach, please.
Yeah, we're still looking at the issues with runoff and drainage on Wood Street, and all of the curb ramps that are out of ADA compliance for them too. So it's not just the surface of the road, it's many things that are going on. And the whole reason that we're trying to get this done is to tackle all of them.
I think it's important to note that in their proposal, the most important phase is the research and investigation phase. To Dave's point, they'll go out there and they'll take a hard look at both of these streets before they start designing anything. And there's also various meetings and communication that take place. It's a step-by-step or a sequential project that they do. They don't just launch into design out of the gate. They want to know what's going on with that road out there. And they want to know what we've got underground in terms of other utilities that may affect the surface that we seem to be focused in on. There's a lot going on under the surface that we don't have good information on, and they research that as part of their charge and what they're proposing to do. So if, depending on what they learn, that kind of dictates the scope of the construction, and the scope of the construction can potentially go down if there's nothing underground that's going to cause potential problems. I know that Zach and I have had conversations about the storm sewer that we seem to be encountering on a lot of projects, and that storm sewer is rotting and failing, but we have Scanex to do some relining of that. Anyway, I guess the point that I wanted to make was that the research and investigation phase is the first step for these guys. And then they can tell you what you have to work with and give you a much better idea of what they're going to have to do or what they're going to design and what your longevity will be accordingly.
That's why you're seeing, like, they're looking at geotechnical core samples, all the videos, all of that kind of stuff. as well.
Right, plus they'll contact RG&E, they'll contact Monroe County Water Authority, they'll ask those utilities, are you coming through here with any major upgrades in the near future? If so, when? And if MCWA says, well, we have to do a new water main here, or Rochester Gas and Electric says, we have to do a new gas main here, well, they'll have that information and they'll build that into their design, and they may say, hey, don't do this until they're done with their particular underground work. By the same token, they may examine the storm sewer and say, it's a candidate for lining, or it may be something that they indicate can be replaced by excavation as part of their work. There are a lot of unknowns that really, haven't come to fruition yet to know exactly what the scope of the project's going to be. Perhaps it'll be really simple and easy. Perhaps.
Mhm. Zach, you wanted to add something?
Yes, to Scott's point, with, part of the scope of their engineering proposal is oversight inspections of the construction project as it goes on. The initial costs wouldn't be $3,000. So if we wanted to look at just having the plan drawn up, then that's only one aspect of the cost that we'd have to pay for up front until construction is started, because those plans are going to be good for until we.
I think that's a good point, Zach. Their proposal is not only for design, administration, and approval, but it's also for assisting the village in putting the project out to bid, selection of a qualified contractor, and then periodic construction monitoring. I believe that's all built into that number.
On top of that, with their inspections being done, that's going to be done if to the point that RG&E or Monroe County Water Authority, any work that they would have planned for their road, if it was expedited to meet the time frame that this project would be going on, it would be, the repairs would be done under the scrutiny of GPI, which means it's going to be done to a higher standard than if they were just meeting RG&E and Monroe County Water Authority, if they were to come in on their own and just slap everything back together. So it's really a good idea that if that's going to be done under our supervision, done to a better standard.
Thank you. Yeah. Justin, sure.
So we talked about possibly kind of breaking this up into a before construction planning and then after construction inspection, that sort of thing. Dorothy, you mentioned a special budget or something.
Yeah, it's called a capital budget.
Capital budget. Could you just walk me through paying for this? Like, let's see.
Well, what we would do, and I would confer, and I think even when Bernie Donegan was here, what we would do is fund it through fund balance. And right now we have a decent fund balance. We could say, the board could say today, let's put 70,000 into the fund balance. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the construction part we would deduct for right now, put in the main part to pay for the services, create that budget. And when we do go out to bid, or whenever we decide to go out to bid, we can roll that cost and refund ourselves from the fund balance if we choose. Okay.
But we'd actually have to, don't we by law have to restore the fund balance if we?
Yeah, we can restore it. We shift it in and use it, whatever. We could do it both ways.
And we can restore it from reserves as well as debt?
Right, we can restore it from reserves. We could do a bunch of different things. We don't have to know automatically. We could say we don't want to go, let's say, we don't want to take 700,000 for the bond or ban. We could say, let's take 600,000, we'll pay the 100 out of budget funds, whatever.
Or repurposing a reserve.
Or repurposing a reserve. But we would have that discussion as we go along. The first part, though, to do this, if you approve the contract, my next request of you would be to create the capital project, to go along with it and fund it from fund balance to cover the cost of the contract.
To get us going.
But I guess I'm concerned that the fund balance, we can't diminish the fund balance without a plan to restore it, right? Unless we're actually.
You can. Only time you have to come up with a plan to restore it is if you go below the percentage of fund balance that the village has adopted. Our fund balance policy is 15%.
You're talking about the general fund?
Yes,
Okay.
and we're not going to go below 15%.
Uh-huh.
No, we have a solid,
Right now, we have a solid.
But could we actually finish, I guess, it seems like this is potentially a large enough part of the fund, the general fund balance, that we might not be able to complete the fiscal year without some plan to replenish that. If you don't think so?
No, absolutely not.
Is it reasonable instead to say, if we create the capital line, to suggest that the money to pay for this will come from the capital improvement reserves that we've created when we did the budget?
You didn't put enough in there to say you could do it. And then if that was the case, then I would say, then you wouldn't create that reserve. Well, you create the reserve, but instead of dictating the money go into the reserve, you dictate that money go into the capital improvement project or the project itself. Because it's not there, so you haven't locked it up. So you can decide you want to shift that budget money into the capital project.
Okay, so let me just think, so one of the reasons why setting up the reserves had value, right, is it took big capital improvement projects, like imagine we bought a truck today, right? We want that truck or any other big ticket like this to come from reserves. We don't have the reserves identified yet, right? As far as the language of the reserves and the specific items, and I think we need to work with Jeff to write those. So the question is, in my mind, this 93,000 should be coming from a long-term capital improvement reserve, but there's no money in it yet. At the end of the year, we should have substantial funds that were identified in the budget to go into the reserves that would be sufficient to cover the debt service for a project of this size in aggregate. So the question that I have is, can we, with the fund balance, if we don't issue a bond until next year to pay for it all, then this year you're simply reducing the amount that you put into the reserves to cover it, or you're creating its own separate line item?
You could, let me see if I can speak that. You can do this 3 ways.
Yep.
I'll give you many options. Okay, you have your first way. We could fund it initially for the cost of the engineering through fund balance and repay ourselves when we take out the ban and restore the fund balance.
and that would be the 93K.
Correct.
But I really don't like the ban, because remember, the ban costs
Or
us extra
bond,
money.
whichever way you want to go.
Bond.
Ban or bond, you could restore your fund
But we
balance.
could issue a bond way in advance of actually doing a road, right?
You could go out to bid now, but you don't know the cost of construction. The problem
Sure.
with doing that is you can either take too much or not enough.
As long as we're under $1 million.
Right. Unless you're bundling, let's say you're doing multiple items. But again, you could be in trouble because you don't have the full number. Okay? Second, the other thing you could do is, instead of putting the money into the reserve as you kind of thought you were going to do with the budget, you could say, you know what, we don't want to do that, shift that money into the capital improvement project for the road and use that to pay for the engineering.
Just directly fund the project.
Directly fund the
Skipping the reserve,
engineering with
putting it
this
in and
year's budget.
taking it out. Okay,
Okay.
that's number 2.
Third, you could decide, you know what, let's not mess with this year's budget, stick with our plan as we have, and just take the money and fund it out of fund balance, and just pay for it directly out of fund balance.
And then the question that I think you were concerned
Yes.
about is, if we take $93,000 out of our fund balance, what does that impact really on us relative to the remaining fund balance?
The remaining fund balance, we're well within our fund balance
Am I
policy.
understanding that correctly?
We're well within our fund balance policy,
Okay.
it's not going to impact it, it's less we have in fund balance by 100,000, given what we're doing. That's the impact. Or you could decide to do 50% of one or 50%. You could say, okay, 50,000 for fund balance, 50% out of this year's budget. But the bottom line is, these are the tools available to you. But if you're going down this path, you're going to create the capital project.
We have to do that.
We gotta fund
have to
pay
fund it
the
somehow
contract.
through that budget.
So I guess That is very helpful, and that's what I was concerned about. I understand that we can use the general fund for things like this without replenishing it fully. And then
Absolutely.
we've got the 15% of overall appropriation
Yep.
policy or something like that that we need to stay within.
Correct.
Otherwise, we're in trouble, right?
Then you're in
But if
trouble.
we don't do that, and I guess I would just like to look at that and just make sure that, right now that fund may be flush, but then 6 or 8 months down the road before the next, tax revenue starts rolling in and the next sales tax and everything, I'm just concerned that we might dip too low.
No, we won't.
Later in the
We're
fiscal
okay, because we're sitting right now, the latest number I looked at, we had almost 800,000 in fund balance, which and unless there's a major catastrophe, we have been able to budget and move forward on 15% fund balance. So, looking at those numbers, we're 50 to 75%, without running the math. We're
Right.
sitting,
So you're looking at that relative to 1.8
right, we're
million budget.
doing fine.
Okay.
So I don't have a fear that we'll have a fund balance catastrophe by taking something from it. It's the easiest act for the board to do.
So let's say we take it out of fund balance. We don't have anything to do out of that. Like, we don't have to adjust the budget, we don't have to create separate lines. We
Nope,
just do
you
it.
just make the motion to fund.
Yeah.
So now let's say we do that. In the same vein, can we connect that motion to spend out of fund balance to a repayment of that balance if and when we do the road and issue a bond? Can we
Yes.
connect those two?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so we can make a motion today to pay for the engineering work
Mhm.
and to credit the fund balance or transfer the fund balance back.
Yep.
When we issue a bond in the amount in aggregate equal to the road.
You got it.
Okay,
Well done.
Do you want to put like a time frame on it?
well, I don't necessarily need to, but we could.
I was just curious.
No, but
No, we could. I don't think you want to, because if we spend to get the engineering work done, and then you say, we're only going to pay it back if we get the road done in a year, well, then if we get the road done in a year and a month,
what is the intention of that limitation, knowing that the motion will include that we will be restoring? I think,
Just, no intentions, just a curiosity.
concern that we don't actually do it.
understood.
Just process, I guess, more or less.
Sure.
I think we
but-
don't want to limit that, because if we have problems with the bond, I don't think we will. If there's the issuing of it, something holds it up, or we have problems getting bids,
Mhm.
which has been a constant problem. I don't think it will. Hopefully next year, we're bidding well in advance. I think you want that little bit of leeway. So
Sure.
like you said, if it comes a year and a month, yeah, I don't want to do
It'd be something
that.
binding.
So it's a
Yeah.
self-imposed limitation that
Yeah.
isn't necessarily
No,
meaningful for us
Mhm.
in this instance, is what I'm
Right,
hearing.
and I would even go so far as to say something to the effect of, should we issue a bond to do the road in excess of the cost of putting the road together and, doing the road, in addition to the engineering work, should the bond be in excess of that, then we're paid back to the fund balance. If we only have to issue a bond for 500,000 and we're comfortable with our fund balance at the end of the year, and we're going into February or whenever then fine, maybe we make a decision then not to,
Oh, that's the point.
right? But I just want to be
Yeah,
I want to be careful
we
that,
can look, the nice thing is, let's say the project goes out in the spring, we see the numbers, we say, you know what, our fund balance came in great this year, we're going to add, and I'm really being fictitious at this point of the year. We have an extra 100,000 we're putting back into fund balance because the budget went so great. Then you can decide, you know what, that 100,000 we took out of fund balance helps pay down the bond debt,
whatever, and
Put
you
it
issue
towards
something, and you
that.
issue something smaller,
right.
Correct.
right, possibly,
It opens the door for
right?
many things, but you need to start the process to at least get the contract going, pay for it. It is very common, and like I said, bring it on again, you said it, fund it out of fund balance, your initial cost, because you can pay yourself back with it.
Mhm. Okay.
So, what is I guess I'm still, this is sounding better, and I like this proposal. There are a couple of moving pieces here. I'd like to, and I did pull up the last financials. It looks like in A909, we've got 721, which is close to the 800 you were talking about. when is our, what we're talking about here is about at least 13% of the fund balance. And then that's not including the 600,000 or so, including the grant money that we're also going to be on the hook for once the construction on this starts. And we haven't done a lot of the multi-year capital planning. I would feel better if at least we had the whole board family at the table when we made this kind of a decision. When's our next meeting that we're talking about where we could consider this, possibly with all the pieces in place, like where the funding is going to come from?
Well, your next meeting is August 15th. If the board tonight wanted to approve the contract, you could do that much, we could fund it the next meeting. I don't think it's going to impact, by the time we get all the paperwork solved and get them going, I think we're fine.
And then would it be helpful, based on this discussion, maybe to put together these options?
Yeah.
So the rest of the board members can also see that too? I don't know. Prior to me? Or what do you think?
I think of all the complexities of it all, it seems like the fund balance is by far the easiest route to go. And if we just put conditions on the repayment of the fund balance with debt, should it exceed it, I don't know. Should it exceed the cost of the project itself, right? So if the project itself is 100,000 and our bond exceeds that, then we're basically paying ourselves back for the engineering work first before we add anything else to it. But that seems to make sense, right? It would maybe benefit the rest of the board to weigh in. My only question there would be is, we've been talking about South and Wood and Sutherland for a long time, and nobody at the board level has voiced an objection. I think the long-term capital plan's probably going to come back with some roads getting done, and this is the first one with potentially with all those manhole covers. If they start to deteriorate, it's our biggest road, right?
Well, one of the three.
One of the three.
In terms of cost, I should.
I mean, if you're looking at a 30-year plus life expectancy, obviously that could go maybe longer if we get the refuse district across the entire village.
What's the next step with the multi-year capital plans? I think we were waiting for some more information and
I think we were needing to schedule another meeting. I think as summer happened. I think it's unfortunate. I mean, summer's great, but for the board, everybody's on vacation. It runs into an issue. We're trying.
So why don't we do this? I think I'm liking your ideas. I mean, I think it's solid. It's a way to move forward. I still think it'd be good to get the information together just about the options, just in general, just so it's on paper
Right.
for
We can at
everybody.
least approve the contract.
But to move forward, to move approve the contract. I think, and I would like to just say publicly, I think GPI has really taken a significant amount of time. And I know, Zach, you have, and Scott, thank you as well. You guys have really, and Dorothy, I know you've weighed in on some of these meetings too, financially. Everybody's been really trying to work within the parameters of the 93K that was originally approved to move forward with this project. And I think there is something solid before us now. And I also think that, Dave, you've given us, sort of good parameters to put into a motion to move it forward. Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Okay.
Justin, how do you feel about all that?
I feel okay with the contract. My concern is that by moving forward with these items in an ad hoc manner, it allows us to continue a pattern where we are not making the decisions that we need to make to keep on top of capital projects going forward without postponing them for year after year. And I feel like with each of these kinds of approvals, it deepens that pattern without addressing the underlying issue. That said, I agree that this is something that, the contract in front of us is solid, it's been reviewed, it's work that's going to need to be done anyway. And this village has issues with not adopting a multi-year capital plan. I'm okay with going ahead with this contract, and we need to get to work.
Okay.
On the capital plan.
I'll
And I
get
think-
a meeting scheduled right away.
Your comment goes all the way back, actually. You're saying very similarly to what I was saying in a completely different way, which is what's the shelf life of this?
Yeah.
Because we know this work needs to be done, but to actually spend the money on the road to raise the bond, we got to get that long-term capital plan done, right? So, all right, so then I will make a motion to approve the contract. What? Jeff,
I've
sorry.
got some change, I have a change
Oh,
that we
yes,
talked about
sorry.
by
Yeah,
email
thanks,
today,
Jeff.
which is that the contract will only be terminable by cause, for cause. Not, so the contract's gonna be terminable for cause.
Okay.
And it'll be redrafted accordingly.
Okay.
So that's the amendment to the contract as
Right.
presented.
Correct.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to approve the contract as amended and discussed here with Jeff, with the understanding that how we go about paying for it and the conditions associated will be done at a meeting of the full board, right? But otherwise, we accept the contract and can proceed.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Marshall.
Aye.
Trustee Lickett.
Aye.
Mayor Plummer.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I think this was a really good discussion. You know, I think these are all really good points.
Drop what I can for the fans, thoughts, and have it for the board.
Yeah, I think just a memorandum going out, just sort of where we're at, you know, and the fact that we need to get going on a 5-year plan.
Can I piggyback on this before you hit the next agenda?
Okay, do you still need Scott on the line?
Nope.
Oh, Scott, thank you so much.
Yeah.
You there?
He's
It was a good, yes, it was a good discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, and all the best to your son.
Okay, thank you. See ya. Bye-bye.
This goes back to the reserves. And Jeff, have you received any direction from the board that you need in order to start writing the language for these reserves? What is it that you need,
I need you to tell me what you want the reserves to be.
what you want the reserves to be?
I'd like to interject something
Yeah.
real quick, because this was with the previous board, and we actually had discussions about how each one was going to be repurposed. And so I'm thinking what we should do is, Dorothea, can we go back and look at the minutes? I think we need to send that around, because that was something that was agreed upon by the previous board.
Correct, we had,
And then we can dig it, because it's tracking with where you're going.
Okay, so
So
this-
rather than reinventing things,
Great.
that's all I'm saying.
And I think this speaks to the long-term plan. So if we could, I don't think we need a motion or anything, let's get that long-term plan meeting, the first one, on the books, because how we segment out the different long-term capital plan, right, and the different subheadings is how these reserves are going to have to be titled,
Yep.
right? And we're going to want everything from infrastructure to parks and rec, or building and maintenance of assets, right? All these
yes,
things.
we had, I believe, 4 or 5 main
Mhm.
reserves that we were looking to get
it's
reestablished and
pretty much tracking.
reallocate. And I think there's a couple more that was
Mhm.
put in with the budget, so
Yep.
I'll pull all that information. And we'll look to, I'm going to ask the board if we can schedule towards the middle of August for the next multi-year, and
Sure.
we'll try to send out dates for that.
Jeff, what is the amount of time you need to write the appropriate reserves?
Depends on what we want.
Well, I was just, give me something.
You mean how many days it's gonna take?
If you're counting days, not weeks, we're good.
No, I meant, it could be 30 days, it could,
All right, well, if you're counting 30 days, that's probably still okay. You're not counting 3 months?
No.
Okay, thank you, that's all I
but I
need.
will need some interface for the board once you get a general direction, and then I'm gonna ask how you're gonna wanna use them.
Mhm.
That's gonna depend how you set up, so.
Okay,
Great,
good,
okay. All set?
yes.
All righty. Next up, proposal for an amendment to the village code for fees.
Just me,
This is, well,
sort of, kind of.
it's sort of, I think it piggybacked off of the email
Yeah.
I forwarded from the attorneys, and
Right,
Yeah, none of this is my own making, but there's a couple code modifications that as we think about properties across the village, both coming and long-term projects, we want to be sure that the code enforcement officer has the ability to consult with folks with regards to money in escrow specific to building permits and all these other things that you need to get done. So under Code Section 105.16, we wanted to add the following line. And actually, I'll just read the whole thing, and then I'll tell you where the new part starts. So 105.16 says, "A fee schedule shall be established by resolution of the Board of Trustees of the village. Such fee schedule may thereafter be amended from time to time by resolution." We've done that a couple times already this year. "The fees set forth in or determined in accordance with such fee schedule or amended fee schedule shall be charged and collected for the submission of applications, building permits, amended building permits, renewed building permits, certificates of occupancy, certificates of compliance, temporary certificates, operating permits, fire safety, property maintenance inspections, and other actions of the code enforcement officer described in or contemplated by this chapter." This is the new part. "For any submission governed by this provision, where the code enforcement officer determines that an outside consultant shall be employed to assist in the review, and said consultant is retained by the village board, the escrow provisions of 210-19.5 shall apply to the payment of fees under this provision." All right. Any comment from the board? Okay, moving on, there's another element regarding the fee schedule in 112-11. This would be brand new. Simply saying, "Fees for any reviews as required by this chapter shall be as set forth from time to time by the village board as part of the official fee schedule. For any submission governed by this provision, wherein the code enforcement officer or historic preservation review board determines that an outside consultant shall be employed to assist in the review, and said consultant is retained by the village board, the ESCO provisions of 210-19.5 shall apply to the payment of fees under this provision." I would like to move forward to adopt these as part of the village code, as recommended by our attorney as well in discussion.
Jeff, did you?
Public hearing.
Anybody?
Why did you leave out the planning board? and
I
zoning
was
board?
just going to ask that too.
112.
I think they should,
Let's include it.
as an amendment, so we'll
As an
amend that with the addition of the planning board and the zoning board.
That sounds
I
good.
would concur with that.
Does the village board also have a need for that with special permits?
Village board as well.
Well, look at this.
Let's get the whole band
Put
together.
everybody together.
Justin, did you have any additional
No,
comments?
I don't have any other
Yeah.
comments right now.
So essentially, it'll be amended such that for any submission governed by this provision, where the CEO, HPB, PZBA, or village
Hold on,
board.
hold on. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
Remember that we're only talking about submissions that look for the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. So the trustees who do work that, yeah, I mean, if they do a special permit, you're gonna have this implicated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it ought to be all.
All right, so everybody's
Yeah.
included.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks for the refinement.
Jeff, what do we need to move forward with this?
I thought Dan was moving forward with this.
Dan Spitzer, I think, was the one who had put this together, so,
There's an email that said,
right.
the email that says my associate
They were researching.
is
some-
researching the prospectivity, which I'm not all part of. And he said, then I assume you want me to draft a local law.
Right.
Yeah, you didn't see my follow-up to that?
Yeah, it was, but I didn't see a resolution.
Yeah, I didn't hear anybody comment, so I didn't know.
Oh, hang
Okay.
on, because
So
maybe I
this
missed the
is good.
follow-up.
All right, so Jeff sent that note, and I know Jeff's done our work for 75 Monroe. This is,
No.
no,
Dan.
Dan
Dan.
Spitzer.
Dan, thank you, Jeff. Dan's done our work for 75 Monroe. This is more specific to just broad code in general, to which, let me just go back to my email. Dan had reflected that he could put that together, and let me just see my follow-up briefly.
I just wasn't sure it was clear.
Yeah, well,
Well, I don't know that it was based on his response,
yeah, so let me just see.
and he never responded today, did he?
Ah,
Okay,
yeah, so my response was, I don't know if you or Jeff would put this proposed local law form through, though I think it's typically Jeff's work. as it would be typical village work, though your input's appreciated and germane. So do we need a motion by the board to determine which attorney does this?
You
Or
would
do
have to
we-
give an attorney a direction, so you pick one,
Okay, so do we
right?
just pick
I
one?
mean,
I would think that our municipal attorney would be the one to adapt what we have in front of us into something that fits within our village code, and we would be able to put that up for public hearing.
I think that's.
So the timeline on this would be that I need to get this on your desks
You have to age it.
before the next meeting,
Mhm.
and then you can act on it at the next meeting.
But I would like to say that I still think there should be connection between what Dan Spitzer, because they were researching something.
It's a different issue.
Okay, just want to make sure we're,
They're unrelated.
okay.
So this
Just
is
want to
gonna
make sure
happen.
we're all separating
This is
out.
gonna happen. What
Okay,
they're researching is whether it would apply.
yes, okay, understood. I just
Yeah.
totally want to make sure everything is separate.
At the end of the day, this is just better code. It's giving the code enforcement officer, as well all the boards, to engage in consultants as needed, and with escrow if determined, to ensure that the right work gets done with the right expertise.
I think it has greater clarity, frankly, you
Yep.
know, which I think is helpful in any circumstance,
Yep.
any
So-
project.
It's the direction for our attorney to adapt it
Yeah.
and put it on our desks for.
Basically, this covers stuff outside of the zoning code.
Mhm.
Okay, so then we're giving
We're
you direction,
directing him.
and if you could have that.
Direction
That's
received.
how it works.
All right, sounds good, great. Nice work.
Okay, thank you. Next,
The next meeting is one.
oh yeah, when is,
August 15th.
And might you, Jeff, as well, reply to my follow-up?
What's that?
Might you also reply to my follow-up so that
And I'll do it.
all might be informed as to the next step on this specific
yeah.
adoption? Thank you.
Okay. Next up, the seeker and EAF for the Eagle Scout project. Next
I'm
project.
going to talk for 30 seconds.
Yes, please, Jim. Even
So-
45.
Eagle Scout has filed a permit with the canal to put the gardens in. His proposal is for the village to maintain them. So that will, so the Canal Corporation wants to see an application from us to that effect. So we would put an application in to maintain those gardens, and it's a type 2 seeker because we are maintaining existing landscaping. There's a citation if anybody needs it.
Or landscaping that will be existing, right? Because,
Well, by the time we step into it, it will be existing.
right.
Yeah, because his permit is to establish it.
He will
This
establish
is
it,
separate,
and our permit trails that one
right?
to maintain it.
Just 1 second. Yeah, exactly.
Do we just have the locations of the gardens? Is
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
as
well, it's-
It's in his application.
Yeah, it
The
was,
original application from, and there were two
It's in
separate.
his application, the Canal Corporation.
yeah, you had, I'm sorry, I didn't include that. That paperwork was approved
just
by the
received
board
it.
at the last meeting. It was the gardens, and you were supposed to work with them on the location related to the trail.
Right. and
So
I
he's
have
going to be
not-
reaching out to you.
Okay, he is
Yeah.
going to be reaching out to me.
Yeah,
So
he-
I just haven't heard from anybody.
No, he just asking about this, like,
So if you
We confirmed that
can
one
give
today.
trustee like this,
Mhm.
it's got exactly where it's going.
Okay. And that's the final location right there of the gardens?
That's my understanding, because this is what we received this today.
Right.
So this is evidently what he has submitted, right, to Canal Corp. So that would be it.
My only concern is that we've talked about a possible other usage of the Canal Corporation land to have a trail that goes up to the Arboretum in the western part of the parcel. And I don't want to, I think there would be an environmental impact of cutting off the possibility of having that trail if we're agreeing to maintain.
I can speak to that, and you'll see it in the application. He stopped the garden well before
Okay.
the area where you're considering, because he knows that. He took
Okay.
that into consideration. And then when we received this today, I said, please reach out to trustee Lightgib so he can see it. But he'll see the application, we'll connect you guys.
Who does the application to the Canal
Done in the house.
House?
Yeah.
do we need a directive from us to get that done?
Well, we voted in the.
We already
voted.
agreed to take care of the gardens,
Yeah.
so it's.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
All right, so it's just
administrative.
administrative.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's administrative.
That's all I needed to know.
But your action tonight is to declare a type 2 action.
That's the one action we need to take.
Oh, well, that's better than a type 1. So then do we need a motion to
Mhm.
declare it a type 2?
Mhm.
I'll make a motion to declare it a type 2.
Regarding the Eagle
Oh,
Scout.
regarding the Eagle Scout project as
Not
identified.
really, no.
No? Oh, regarding,
Oh,
sorry,
regarding-
right,
Regarding
Villages.
our application to the canal
To the
permit
canal.
for
Maintain.
maintaining the
Okay.
gardens that it's putting in.
I'll make a motion to have the village maintenance of proposed gardens along the canal path as identified in the project application by the Eagle Scout. Make a motion for this to be identified as a type 2 project, the village's maintenance thereof.
I'll second.
Trustee Marshall,
Aye,
trustee Lightgev,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Aye.
motion passes.
that's why I don't word many
We
motions.
got it, though. We all got it.
I like the good word.
Okay, what else is next?
That's it.
Any other quick items?
I'm good.
I think this was good. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Trustee Marshall,
Aye.
trustee Lightgev,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Aye.
motion passes.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, is the smoke supposed to clear?